Hey, you guys, I wanted to come on here and give my commentary regarding the two political figures, Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, and why I feel like black people should not vote blindly for candidates who pander to them. Now, first, I have to start off by saying that I'm actually aware that Kamala Harris at this point is no longer in the race for presidency, but I did want to shed light and provide some insight on why we should be cognizant of politicians who seem to initially have our best interests, but have policies that don't reflect their pandering behavior. Now, I don't plan on giving a biography on Kamala Harris or Cory Booker, but I want to begin at the moment that they decided to enter the election for becoming president. Now, I'm going to start off first with Kamala Harris. She is a senator from California, and she's actually been serving in this position since 2017. She decided that she wanted to run for presidency in January of 2019, and she had created a campaign in Oakland which had garnered a significant amount of people who seemed to realize her potential during this time. And throughout the year, she would continue to speak at numerous venues just in an effort to convince voters to vote for her. Now, interestingly enough, black voters who were listening to her speeches grew increasingly skeptical because by this time, black people were starting to actually become suspicious of candidates that would only pander but not deliver any realistic policies or expectations that would benefit them in their favor. And some black people were supportive while others were being judicious and astute with their support. Now, despite the incredulity, she still continued to attend numerous conferences, and she actually went on the campaign. She actually went on her campaign, but black people still were a little bit cautious and even started to withdraw their support when she was doing an interview. And when she was asked by the interviewer about reparation, she didn't directly address the question. Instead, she proposed a law in which taxpayers who had earnings of less than 100,000 would be granted a tax credit, and this would have been known as something called the Lift Act. It was an anomalous statement because it didn't really make sense to black people why she would assume that housing is an issue and the only sole issue that we face, and that somehow granting a tax credit would directly benefit them. Because if you think about it, by this logic, anyone of any race could easily be eligible for that act. And so it ultimately did a disservice to the black community if it seemed like her perspective of reparations is to help everyone else out in the same instance. So fast forward to December 3rd, and Kamala Harris had made a statement stating that she was withdrawn from the race, and it's a possibility that it has something to do with the debate she had with Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, because to my understanding, her poll numbers dwindled exponentially due to that debate. She also had dropped out due to a deficiency of funds. So, hopefully, with that little bit of knowledge, now that you guys have some knowledge on Kamala Harris's run, I do want to offer my brief thought on her run. Now, this is just my opinion, but I would not have voted for her because, first, I felt like she pandered excessively. I mean, it was to the point to where even people who didn't have a background in politics could have seen through her facade, and that's just my opinion. I mean, I feel like when she did a commercial doing the Wakanda pose at the end of it, it was just ridiculous to me. And I don't see how that is supposed to convince me to vote for a candidate. And secondly, when she had taken a picture of her eating greens with hot sauce, I really felt like she was just at that point trying to insult black intelligence by purposely having someone take a picture of her with hot sauce, as if this stereotype that unfortunately seems to be attached to the black community is going to help her garner the black vote. And all the while she's doing all of this, questions started to actually kind of go through my mind at that point, because this is what I was thinking. I was thinking, okay, if she isn't for reparations, what is she going to do regarding issues like police brutality, which, I mean, I'm sure all of you know, disproportionately affects black people the most? Or what is she going to do about black healthcare, where black people have higher health insurance premiums? Or even something in the educational system, which, when you think about that, has to do with the literacy rate. what are you going to do about the literacy rate for little black boys and black girls as far as making sure to reach a certain level of proficiency? And I have to digress just for a moment to go on a small rant, but why does it seem like that with black people? You have to pander by adding in a stereotypical way that you think would appease us. I mean, no other community of people would ever accept something so simple-minded. And it's like with us, we accept these images and behavior, and it seems like that this is all it takes for us to vote for someone. And quite frankly, you guys, I'm actually fatigued and I'm filled with annoyance that these politicians, they do this. I mean, they really take us for some kind of fool if they think that it just takes something so simple for us to vote for them. And this is why I urge black people to really research and review the policies that these candidates present before just, blindly voting for them. Because I feel like we don't properly evaluate these political figures. They almost always put on this front that somehow we will be the first priority when it comes to problems that we face within our community. Now, granted, I completely understand, and I don't expect for every candidate to be Malcolm X, and I am aware that the president has a duty to fulfill and help everybody, but it just seems like in every instance we lose every time. I mean, I'm sure some of you have even noticed that our community hasn't even really been elevated in any kind of way. And I think also we may be slightly politically immature as it concerns the reasons we vote for these candidates. I mean, I think we vote based on symbolism. Because if you guys think about it, if a candidate looks like us, we go for them every time. And I don't want you guys to think in any way I'm above reproach because, hey, I'm right there with you. I've made the same mistake. I was doing the same thing because I had actually fully supported Obama blindly in 2008 and 2012 under the guise that, he was a black man, he had a black wife. We saw that during the course of Obama's presidency when the murders of black men and women really started taking off and becoming a highly publicized thing because of social media. It seemed like that he was either slow to react or he just completely disregarded it altogether. And this is why, again, I just urge black people to really be careful and think thoroughly about who it is they choose to elect. Now, also, I just want to make something else clear. I'm not saying black people shouldn't vote. I think black people should vote, if nothing else, at least understand that your vote matters at your local level, like when you vote for a judge or you vote for a mayor or an attorney. Now, the popular vote, which is the vote that you guys put forth for the president, understand that that vote doesn't have any direct power to actually elect a president into office. Now, the vote makes a difference for the candidate the vote that makes a difference for the candidate to actually become the president, you guys have to understand, is the electoral college vote. That one always takes precedence and is the only one that matters when it comes to deciding who's going to actually sit in the Oval Office. I mean, there is this very large common misconception that's advertising propaganda, and it's that people have the right to dictate and vote and that their voice will be heard. But in reality, you don't have the power to determine, like I said, who sits in the Oval Office. You can only really control what happens locally. Now that you guys kind of know my thought a little bit on that, I do want to kind of go to Cory Booker now because I don't want the video to become too long. But Cory Booker, he decided to place his bid for candidacy in February of 2019, so just this year. And he campaigned relatively well throughout the course of this year. And to my knowledge, he hasn't had any deficiencies in any areas of his campaign, as he is still actively involved in the race. Now, one thing I immediately kind of want to get to, Cory Booker was asked his thoughts on reparations, to which black people were eagerly awaiting his answer to see what he was going to say. Now, his proposition was that the generation of more jobs should be created, as well as black people having more access to high-profile jobs to ensure equity and an equal playing field so that black people would have a more successful socioeconomic status, if you will. And one of the things that I kind of want you guys to really pay attention to, it's similar to Kamala Harris. It seems like they both have this tendency to dance around the question of reparations. And the issue I have with this is that I can respect them more if they both just kind of said no, they don't support the notion of reparations. even though it is something that would greatly benefit black people collectively. But my issue is to suggest something other than financial compensation is ultimately keeping black people under the same system of oppression and subjugation. And you know what? Let's even just go with the theory that black people have access to more jobs and equity for employment. The problem with this is that they still fall victim to white supremacy, because at the end of the day, they still have to obey somebody that is higher up in the chain of command, as opposed to a financial award, which could free them from that system because they can start their own businesses. There would be no need to report this type of system if black people had funds to actually start their own businesses, hospitals, etc. So again, I want to reiterate to black people, think carefully before you vote, because these politicians may seem like they are for you, and the black or biracial ones may seem like they're for you, but their actions based on the past elections have always shown to be exceedingly duplicitous and deceptive. I mean, if any of these politicians delivered on their promises, the black community will look very different than it actually does today. But if we were in a better state, understand that white supremacy would be adversely affected as well. And this is what I want you guys to listen to. Please take note of this. Think about why it is that our community is always overlooked. If people actually wanted to help us, we would reach a point of independence in which we wouldn't need any help, and we would no longer be dependent on them. And if we aren't dependent on them, then their system starts to decompose. Also want you guys to think quickly about Black Wall Street. If any of you know about Black Wall Street, it was a system in which black people had their own businesses and they were thriving. We did not need them in their economics because they saw how well we were doing without them. It coincidentally was bombed during the Tulsa, Oklahoma bombing, and black people were left with no choice but to integrate with their economic structure. So I'm sorry, you guys, I did have to divert and just go off on a tangent, but just to kind of prove a point that history repeats itself. And if we aren't careful when we vote for these politicians, it will, in essence, only further contribute to the prevalent deterioration of our community. But I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts regarding black politicians and their illusion of assistance? Do you think we should continue to support these candidates, or should we devise another strategy without the aid of political figures? Make sure you guys get in the comment section, like, subscribe, share, and I will see you guys in the next video.